So we're starting here with page 4 of your notes. We're just at the top of page 4, the media browser. Let's have a look at Final Cut Pro and walk our way through these notes. So I'm going to open up Final Cut, and we're where we left off in the last video. So your media appears obviously in the media browser area, and you can see it appears as film strips. You use your pointer to skim over the shots. So if I bring my pointer onto the Justin clip, you can see it turns into a red line, and this allows me to skim through the shot. However, I want to point out that this is dependent on this little blue icon here being turned on, turn video and audio skimming on or off. If this is gray, it's turned off, and that means the pointer tool doesn't work. So you need to ensure that this little icon here is clicked so that it turns blue, and if you hold your cursor over it, you will see that it is called the turn video and audio skimming on or off button, and once you've done that, then you get your little red line that enables you to skim through the clip. If you position it and hit the space bar on your keyboard, the clip plays. If you hit it again, it will stop. If we go up to the top of the screen here, you will see 3 little icons beside the All Clips folder. So these are different ways of displaying your film strip. If we start with the little movie icon here, clip appearance and filtering menu. When I click on this, I get a drop-down menu, and you can see I can adjust the size of the clips within my media browser. You can also see that I can choose to view them with or without waveforms, which are basically the audio section down here. And I can also go to the little clock tool here, and by moving this along, I can see 1 frame every 5 minutes, 1 frame every 2 minutes, a frame every 30 seconds. So you can see if I minimize this, that suddenly we're seeing loads and loads of images of Justin, because we're now seeing 1 frame every 30 seconds. You can bring that right up to 1 frame every 5 seconds, or you can bring it right down to 1 frame every 30 minutes. It depends entirely on how much material you have in your project and your own kind of preferences in terms of viewing it. Continuous playback simply just means the clip will play from start to finish as you work your way through it. But if we go back to our Justin end clip, remember our little icon is on here so I can skim through it. So I can bring my cursor to the start. I'm not clicking anything, I'm just literally positioning it on the start. Now I'm hitting play bar, or space bar rather.
In the band, is the local the global?
And I mark in,
I would say
I on the keyboard.
To do lyrically in this album is to my people who were in their shoes.
Out point, O on the keyboard. I'm going to pause that there. So you can see I've marked an in and I've marked an out by hitting the I key on the keyboard and the O key on the keyboard. What I'm now going to do is hit F on the keyboard, and that marks the clip as a favorite. You can see when I do that we get this little green bar here, and you will also note that if I go into favorites, just that section of the clip is available. So literally it's just the first line, Justin speaks. We've cut out the question,
I would say,
and we come directly in on where I mark the in and out points. So most editors will work through their primary material. Once they've imported it, stored it in their movies folder, in their tutorial, in their event, they will then bring the clips in individually, and they will mark in and out points and use the F key to make those favorites. That means you can access all your best material via the favorites folder here. Obviously, we can leave favorites and go back to all video. We'll see all the video clips that are currently stored in this event, in this library. And the still, which was the department logo still, is in the stills folder. It automatically puts still images into stills, audio only clips into audio only, and video into the video folder. Now, up at the top here, beside the little film strip icon, we have a list icon. You can toggle between film mode, which is the still you see here with the waveform on it, and list mode. In list mode, you can see not only is our favorite marked on the film strip, but you can also see that it now appears as favorite directly underneath the name of the clip. So there's a drop-down menu here, Justin Interview 1, and you can see favorite. That's the piece we marked where Justin talks about his favorite bands. What I recommend at this point is scroll along. You can see it shows the start and end points of the clips, the duration of the clips, when the content was created, etc. But it's this notes column that's important. Click on it, drag it back right to the start, and drop it in right beside the name of the clip. So you can see notes here. In relation to this favorite, I'm now going to call on notes, and I'm going to call it influences, because Justin talks about his favorite bands, okay? Why do I do this? Well, let's suppose I want a second favorite from this chunk of interview with Justin. So if I now go back into regular mode and I scroll along, again, I'm not clicking the mouse, I'm just scrolling with it, and I find the next piece of information I want. So I'm leaving my red scrubber bar there. I'm hitting space bar to play.
So I was really sort of looking at this through somebody else's eyes because I'm no longer the person that I was when I was 13 or 14 or 15 years old. And
In point,
probably a series of songs.
out point, F for favorite. I'm going to pause it there as well. And you can see little green bar there. If I go to favorites, I now have two clips, but note they're both called Justin Interview 1, Justin Interview 1. The only way you can differentiate between them is by going to list format, and you can see that the Justin Interview 1 favorite is called Influences, and the Justin Interview 1 favorite here I can now call Plan, because he talks about having a plan. So it's just a way of making sure that if you're taking more than one favorite clip from a larger clip, so in this case our larger clip is the Justin interview. It's about 4 minutes long, I think, maybe a bit longer. Actually, what am I looking at there? It's quite long. But if I look at favorites, you can see that I now have the piece where he talks about bands' influences, and then I have the piece where he talks about the plan. So you take your chunked interview, it could be 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes long, and you'll break it down into individual favorite pieces. And if you bring that note name up, as I said, you could go into list format, and then under list you can drop down and say, which is that bit? That's the bit where he talks about influences. Which is that bit? That's the bit he talks about having no major plan. So you use your own keywords to make sure that you're clear on what you're doing. Seems very anal, but it's part of the whole housekeeping process. It's grand when you're working on a short piece like your 4 minute, but if you're working on an hour-long documentary or a 2-hour-long documentary, this is the sort of careful naming and storing and ordering that you need to do. We're moving on to the final page of your first handout, page 5, and we're going to look at the timeline for the first time. Previous editions of Final Cut Pro, and indeed a lot of the software that's available, whether it's Adobe Premiere, iMovies, a lot of the other kind of lesser known software systems that are out there for editing, would have what's called a track-based editing timeline. That basically means, as you can see in the diagram here, that the video tracks are displayed on the top of the screen and then individual audio tracks are displayed underneath. Final Cut Pro X swaps this for what we call storyline editing. It's a whole different approach. In FCP X, the track-based system is replaced with the storyline system, and the primary storyline is the narrative spine, containing both video and audio, and additional clips can then be anchored to the primary storyline. We're going to look at the controls that allow you to do this and then demonstrate what we're talking about. So if you bear with me while we open up, while we open up Final Cut. So here's our timeline down here, and we're going to start by just looking at this little section here, okay? So the graphic on the left here appears in the top left corner of your timeline. The timeline index allows you to find material when it's on your timeline. We look at that once we've got some material on the timeline. But the important things are these 4 little icons here. These are different ways of connecting or selecting clips that will appear on your primary storyline. The cursor, if held over, will tell you exactly what the material does. So you can see the first icon is to connect the selected clip to the primary storyline. The second icon is to insert the selected clip in the primary storyline or the selected storyline. The third icon is to append the selected clip to the primary storyline or the selected storyline. And the fourth is straightforward editing. Overwrite the primary storyline or the selected storyline with the selected clip. So let's demonstrate. I'm going to go to my favorites here. I'm going to play the first Justin clip, which if you remember, if we look at it in list form, you will see it's the influences on the band. I'm going to go back into normal mode. You can see when I click on it, I get this yellow box all the way around it. That means the clip is now selected. You need to see that yellow box for these 4 icons to work. So the first one I'm going to go with is straightforward overwrite editing. That simply means that wherever this scrubber bar on the timeline is placed, that is where the clip will go. So this is my primary storyline, nothing in it at the moment. I'm going to bring my scrubber bar back to the start. I'm going to select the first favorite clip where Justin talks about influences musically, and I'm going to go down to the straightforward overwrite the primary storyline or the selected storyline with the selected clip. I click on this, and lo and behold, up pops the clip down here. So you can see when we play it on our storyline now,
I would say what we attempted to do in
Okay, so that is straightforward overwrite edit. Okay, wherever I position my scrubber bar, if I use this with a selected clip, that's where the clip will go. So you can see it appears way down here with loads of blank left in between. Edit, undo. Your edit undo button is a good friend. You'll find yourself using it a lot. Normally, when you, in overwrite mode, drop a clip onto the timeline, the scrubber bar is automatically pushed to the last frame. And I should note, this is called snapping. You see the way it goes from white to yellow? So over on this side, we have what's called the snapping tool. Again, blue to be active, grey to be inactive. Without it turned on, nothing snaps. In other words, I move my white scrubber bar over the end of the clip. With it turned on, blue, now when I go to the end of the clip, it's like a magnet. It pulls the scrubber bar onto the end of the clip and lines it up for me and turns yellow to show you that it's doing that. Okay? So let's just go for a next clip. Note I've placed my scrubber bar in the middle here, and for argument's sake, let's say I want the second favourite where Justin talks about lack of a plan. I highlight it so I get my yellow box around it, but this time I choose the option here, which is append the selected clip to the primary storyline or the selected storyline. What that simply means is that it won't go where the scrubber bar is, it will go on the end of the clip. You can see the icon here, a little film clip, and this is pointing and it's going to go at the end of it. So with this highlighted yellow, I can click here, and basically you see the second clip appears down here. So option 1, overwrite. Option 2, append to the end of your primary storyline. Option 3 is what we call insert editing. Now, let's just go back to our all video for a moment. Let's pick the clip of the band performing, highlighted yellow. Note at my scrubber bar, I can pick a section of it. I'm just going to take a in point here by holding I down on the keyboard, play for a couple of seconds, pause by hitting the space bar both times, O to mark an out point, F to mark a favorite. Go into my favorites, you can see that little clip has now appeared here. So I'm highlighting that one this time. With my snapping bar on, I can now bring my cursor back and line it up there, or alternatively I can use the up, down, left, right arrows on my keyboard. Left will bring you back frame by frame, right will bring you forward frame by frame, but up, down, up will bring you back cut by cut, and down will bring you forward cut by cut. So I'm lining up on the gap between the two clips here. And now I'm going to go for insert. So I'm going to pick my band so that it's bright yellow, and I'm going to insert this clip between the two. Tiny little clip. Let's have a look at it and play. And you can see I've now inserted the clip. Doesn't make any sense, I know, just to demonstrate what these 4 buttons do. Okay? I have a clip here called Wide Shot Band Performing, WS Band Performing. If I go to my index now, imagine I have about 100 minutes worth of material on my timeline. If I go to index and I type in WS Band Performing, only that clip comes up. So now when I go to that, it brings me and highlights that particular clip. If I want to change it, if I want to elongate it, various other stuff that we'll be looking at as we move through. So the index just helps you find material on your timeline. It's blue when it's active. When you click on it, it goes grey and disappears. So we've looked at overwrite editing, insert editing, and append editing. The last one here that we haven't looked at yet is what we call connecting editing. In other words, connecting clips to the timeline. Now, I don't have material in here, but for argument's sake, if I go for stills and I take my Mary I logo here, I could now choose to put my scrubber bar wherever I want, highlight this clip, and basically attach it to the primary storyline. If I use Z for zoom, you will see my magnifying glass appears. Zoom in on that, and you can now see that basically I have attached that clip so that the visuals appear, but we still hear Justin's voice. So this is the primary source whereby you conduct an interview, you listen to the person talking, and you drop cutaway images to go and show imagery relevant to whatever it is that's being talked about. Okay? These 4 icons are literally your 4 keys for successful editing within the primary storyline. And again, just to emphasize one last time, they are overwrite and insert editing, they are append editing, and they are connect editing. Now, the next important thing to look at is this little drop down arrow here. I'm just going to go back to my all videos so we can see our videos. And note, by the way, you can see the little green favourites appearing in the clips here, and a little bit of green there, just showing the bits that have been highlighted already. However, I want to go back down here to this little drop down arrow. This is a really important icon here. It's what's called the Edit Tool Selection button. If I click on the little drop down arrow here, you can see the keyboard shortcuts to perform different functions within the primary storyline interface. A is the select key, which is simply the cursor that I'm currently using. T allows you to trim a shot. How do you trim a shot? You click on trim, or you go T on your keyboard. Now when I bring my cursor down to the end here, you can see I can grab the clip and I can extend it, or I can shorten it, okay? If I take the bit in the middle here and do the same, the band performing, you can see not only can I extend the clip, but it doesn't tape over the clip that comes after it. It pushes the clip that comes after it forward, so you don't lose anything. So that's your trim mode. Drop again, position mode, P on your keyboard. This just allows you to pick a clip and position it wherever you want on your timeline. So you can kind of move it around all over the place very, very easily. Or I can take one from the primary storyline, change its position and put it down there. And again, remember your edit undo. Edit undo move, edit undo move, edit undo move. So if you do something you don't particularly want to do, you can go back, I think it's about 120 different moves, and you can return it to the way you had it. After position, there is range selection. Very, very handy tool, which I'll demonstrate later, but just give you a very simple idea of it first. Let's imagine for a moment there's a piece of volume here that we want to raise, but we don't want to raise the volume on the whole clip. I can go to my range tool, I can click, drag, I select that one section, and now I can simply raise the audio for that one section or lower the audio for that one section. Very handy little tool when it comes to fine-tuning your sound. Again, edit, undo volume adjustment, edit, undo trim, and edit, undo trim. We're back to where we were. The blade tool does exactly what you would imagine, B for blade. So when I click on this, my cursor becomes a little red razor blade. For argument's sake, let's say Justin waffles a bit here and I want to cut out the last couple of seconds of him. I can simply just click with my razor blade on the clip. It puts a cut on the clip. I can then go to select, or A on your keyboard, select the bit I want to remove, and then simply using the backspace key on your keyboard, I can remove that clip. So a very handy way of fine-tuning your material once you've put it on the timeline. Next down is the zoom tool. You've seen me use it already. It turns your cursor into a magnifying glass. You can now zoom in on the clip, and if you hold the Option Alt key down, you can see it becomes a minus, and you can zoom out from the clip. So you can make it as big or as small as you want using the zoom key. And finally is hand. This is for when you have a lot of material on your timeline and you want to be able to physically move the timeline back and forth quickly so you can see all the material that you have sorted. So these tools are essential for the editing interface. Generally, we'll leave it in the select mode A. It just becomes a cursor and allows you to click on the various things and move things around. But you can see all the other options that are available. The other thing I want you to note at this point, let's just take the wide shot band performing again, and this time we'll play it for a little. We'll mark an in point, I on the keyboard, out point, O on the keyboard. I'm not even going to make that a favorite now. You can see the piece that I've chosen. So I can choose to either append that onto a clip. If I click on append, you see it appears where the scrubber bar was, edit, undo. I can choose to insert it where the scrubber bar is, drop it in, it's inserted, edit, undo. I can choose to append it to the end of the clip. Sorry, the previous one should have been connect, appended to the end of the clip. It appears down here, edit, undo. Or I can choose to overwrite, which means wherever the scrubber bar is, it will just plonk it down and tape over anything on the timeline. However, I want you to notice something. There's a little drop-down arrow beside the overwrite button, and when you click on that, you get a sub-menu that says, do you want to move all the material, video only, or audio only? If I choose video only, select the same clip and append, and I then choose audio only, select the same clip and append, or rather overwrite, you can see the first clip basically has sound and visuals. The second clip is visuals with no sound, and the third clip is sound with no visuals. So you have a choice as to whether you want to just use audio only, video only, or all, in other words, audio and video when you're making these choices. Finally, I want to look at this section here, which is basically a set of options that enable you to view the timeline. We're looking primarily, before we move on to effects, at the exact same little icon, movie icon, that we see both here in relation to the timeline, and we looked at it up here in relation to the media browser. So when I go to timeline, you can see I've got different ways of displaying my timeline. I can look at my timeline where it's all audio, where it's primarily audio with a small visual, where it's half and half, where the visual dominates, where the visual totally dominates, or I can simply look at it at a thin band. I can, as with the other button we looked at up here, the movie selector up here, I can choose to increase the size of my timeline. I can choose to zoom and crush it in. So I can have loads of controls here in terms of how I want to view my timeline, depending on the amount of material that I have already on the primary storyline down here. Okay? And you can see, obviously, once you've got material on your storyline, then you can simply hit the play button and you can view exactly what's going on with it.